An update to a story we've been tracking for you out of Aiken County. Investigators say they have located the body of missing mother Jamilla Smith. She had not been seen since December 2nd and has been presumed dead by investigators. Aiken Bureau Chief Sean Capistock has the latest.
This family expect and really deserve to have closure and know where Millie is.
Chandra Jennings is a private investigator who has been working with authorities as they search for Jamilla Smith. Now they're also looking for Brian Hampton, who they say is the cousin of Smith's ex-boyfriend, Daniel Harmon, who is charged with murder in this case.
He was close to the family. He's also a family member of Daniel's. So, I just hope that they can get to him and he could tell where Jamilla's body is so that the family could have closure.
This is the story of Jamilla Smith. On December 2nd, 2023, at 7:30 p.m., a 911 call was received from 30-year-old Jamilla Smith in Aiken County, South Carolina. During the call, she reported that her ex-boyfriend, Daniel Harmon, had broken into her home and was chasing her. The call contained the sound of screaming, a car door slamming, and an engine revving. The call then disconnected. Law enforcement traced the call to her residence. When officers arrived, she was not there. A missing person investigation began on December 3rd, 2023. Evidence collected at the scene indicated a struggle. Jamilla's phone was recovered near her home. Witnesses reported seeing Harmon's vehicle in the area that night. He was identified as a primary suspect. On December 5th, 2023, Harmon was located and arrested after a standoff with police. He was charged with murder, kidnapping, and drug-related offenses. Two additional individuals, Brian Alexander Hampton Jr. and Clyde James Henley II, were later arrested and charged as accessories after the fact. Both were accused of assisting in the disposal of the body and evidence. For several months, Jamilla's location remained unknown. Search efforts continued across Aiken County. On May 8th, 2024, human remains were found in a wooded area off Wire Road. The remains were confirmed through DNA testing to be those of Jamilla Smith. The Aiken County coroner ruled the cause of death as multiple gunshot wounds to the head.
There's been a tremendous effort in trying to resolve this case.
On Thursday, investigators discovered human remains in a wooded area on Silver Bluff Road, identified as Jamilla Smith. The 30-year-old disappeared on December 2nd.
She was buried, so we had to use an excavator to assist us with recovering her remains. We have taken statements, evidence processing. There's still a significant amount of evidence that needs to be processed, electronic data, and so forth.
While the motive remains unclear, authorities stress that the case will stay open until prosecution.
We can't do this by ourselves. And in this case, for example, our community has reached out to us because they are just as affected as their family, even though it's on a deeper level for our family.
The case is still under investigation. In Aiken County, I'm Aiken Bureau Chief Sean Capistock, WJBF News Channel 6.
The investigation determined that Jamilla was abducted and killed shortly after her 911 call. Digital evidence, witness statements, and forensic findings linked Daniel Harmon directly to crime. Before we dive into today's story, we want to hear from you. Where are you tuning in from? And how do you feel as the story unfolds? Welcome to Deadly Crime Unmasked, the show where we expose the shocking crimes that rip through communities and the chilling secrets lurking behind closed doors. These are real people, real events, real consequences. Don't forget to subscribe and activate notifications. You won't want to miss the gripping story that's coming up. Now, let's dive in. Jamilla Smith was born and raised in Aiken County, South Carolina. She was known among her family, friends, and community as Millie. To those who knew her, she was dependable, caring, and consistent in her daily life. She was described as the type of person who offered help before being asked and who carried herself quietly, with responsibility and focus. Jamilla was a mother to young children, and most of her time outside of work revolved around them. She maintained a structured household and worked to balance her role as a provider with her efforts to ensure her children had stability and comfort. Jamilla worked within the Aiken area, known among co-workers as reliable and organized. She rarely missed work and often took extra shifts to meet her financial obligations. Her supervisors noted that she was disciplined and respectful, rarely involved in conflicts, and often the one others turned to for assistance. Outside of work, she dedicated her time to her family, managing school activities, appointments, and daily responsibilities without relying on others. Those close to her said her main goal was to create a life of safety and progress for her children after enduring earlier challenges. Before her disappearance, Jamilla had been rebuilding her life following a turbulent relationship. She had separated from her former partner, who had caused her emotional and physical distress. The breakup was not peaceful. There were ongoing issues related to jealousy, arguments, and interference. Jamilla's focus after that relationship was recovery, regaining control over her personal and emotional space, securing her finances, and preparing for a more stable future. Her efforts to rebuild were visible to those around her. She had plans to advance her career, move to a better home, and create a secure foundation for her family. Neighbors in Aiken County often saw Jamilla walking with her children or maintaining her yard. She was approachable, polite, and greeted others easily. In her workplace, she was known for her professionalism. Among her family, she was the one others called when they needed advice or help managing household issues. Friends stated that her strength and patience stood out, even when she faced difficulties in her private life. However, beneath that calm image, Jamilla was managing the consequences of a past relationship that had turned toxic and threatening. While she kept much of her struggle private, her family later confirmed that she had been dealing with ongoing harassment from her former boyfriend, Daniel Harmon. The contrast between her peaceful outward life and the turmoil behind closed doors became clear only after her death. Jamilla's life, defined by kindness and commitment, was ultimately ended by the same person she once cared for. Daniel G. Harmon entered Jamilla's life several years before her death. He was known within certain circles in Aiken County and neighboring areas for a history that included drug activity, minor criminal charges, and unstable personal behavior. Harmon had previously faced law enforcement attention for drug-related incidents and was known by acquaintances as controlling in his romantic relationships. Jamilla met Harmon through mutual friends. At first, the relationship appeared normal. Harmon presented himself as attentive, helpful, and protective. He offered emotional support when Jamilla was struggling financially, and he appeared to care for her children. Early photographs and messages between them reflected what seemed to be mutual affection. For a period, Jamilla believed she had found someone dependable after previous difficulties. However, people close to Jamilla began noticing changes as the relationship progressed. Harmon's behavior became possessive. He questioned where she went, who she spoke to, and often accused her of dishonesty without evidence. He attempted to control her communication, limiting her social contact and demanding constant updates on her location. What began as concern gradually developed into surveillance and aggression. Reports later indicated that Harmon's use of drugs, particularly methamphetamine, intensified his paranoia. He became increasingly suspicious of Jamilla's actions and accused her of betrayal. Family members recalled her mentioning that arguments often escalated to shouting, threats, and sometimes physical altercations. She would leave for a few days but return, convinced that he would change. The cycle of apology and control repeated multiple times. According to relatives, Jamilla's family warned her repeatedly about Harmon's behavior. They advised her to cut ties completely, describing him as unstable and dangerous. Jamilla, however, tried to manage the situation without confrontation. She wanted to end the relationship safely, avoiding conflict that might lead to further violence. There were indications that law enforcement had been called to disturbances involving the two of them on more than one occasion. Records from domestic-related calls show patterns of verbal and physical disputes, though not every incident resulted in formal charges. In some cases, Jamilla declined to press charges, hoping the situation would calm down on its own. Friends and co-workers later told investigators that Jamilla appeared increasingly anxious in the months leading up to her disappearance. She mentioned receiving calls and messages from Harmon even after their separation. In some texts, she told friends that Harmon had threatened her, saying he would not allow anyone else to be with her. One friend stated that Jamilla had said He keeps watching me. I think one day he'll really do something. By late 2023, Jamilla made the decision to permanently end her relationship with Daniel Harmon. She changed her phone number and minimized her contact with him. She told her family she wanted to focus on her children and her career. Harmon, however, refused to accept the separation. He continued appearing at her residence and sending messages from multiple accounts. Jamilla began documenting the incidents, saving evidence of his harassment. Her family members recalled her saying she was considering moving to another part of town to escape him. Around this time, she also contacted law enforcement about unwanted contact, though it is unclear how extensive the police response was. Despite attempts to distance herself, Harmon's actions escalated. Witnesses later described seeing Harmon driving near her home in the days before she disappeared. Jamilla mentioned to her mother that she was planning to seek legal action if the harassment continued. She did not realize that Harmon was already watching and waiting for an opportunity to confront her directly. The final separation triggered Harmon's anger beyond what Jamilla could manage or predict. Her efforts to rebuild her life were consistent and visible. Steady work, family focus, and self-reliance. Yet the link to Harmon, marked by violence and manipulation, will become the central factor in her disappearance and death. Jamilla's relationship with Daniel Harmon began as a promise of support, but evolved into a situation of control, fear, and danger. The relationship's decline followed a common pattern observed in domestic abuse cases: isolation, threats, escalating violence, and the victim's attempts to leave. Each effort to distance herself increased the risk, leading to the final events of December 2nd, 2023, when her last communication with the outside world was a desperate 911 call that captured the moment her life was taken from her. In the days leading up to her disappearance, Jamilla Smith had begun making deliberate efforts to distance herself from her ex-boyfriend, Daniel G. Harmon. According to multiple witness accounts and family statements, she had expressed growing concern about her safety. People close to her confirmed that she was spending increasing amounts of time at relatives' homes rather than staying at her own residence in Aiken County, South Carolina. Her reason for doing so, as stated by her relatives, was that she did not feel secure being alone. Jamilla had been in an on-and-off relationship with Harmon, a man known by law enforcement for prior criminal activity, including drug-related offenses. Over the course of their relationship, he had exhibited controlling behavior that escalated after she made clear her decision to end all contact. Law enforcement reports later noted that she had communicated to friends and family that Harmon would not accept her separation from him. As the separation continued, Harmon's behavior allegedly became more erratic and threatening. Several friends told investigators that he would appear unexpectedly at places she frequented. On multiple occasions, he was reported to have driven by her home without stopping, parking his car in nearby locations where he could watch the property. One neighbor later recalled seeing the same car slowly pass by several times during both daytime and late-night hours. Jamilla also began receiving text messages and phone calls from Harmon that she found threatening. Investigators recovered records showing a pattern of contact attempts by him even after she had blocked his number on one of her phones. Harmon reportedly used different phone numbers and social media accounts to reach her. One message recovered later from her backup device reportedly read, "You can't hide from me." Friends advised Jamilla to file an official complaint and pursue a protective order. She expressed hesitation, reportedly stating that she did not believe it would change anything. Those close to her later said she was frustrated with how slow and uncertain the system could be when it came to domestic disputes. She told one person, "They'll only act when something happens." On December 1st, 2023, several witnesses in her neighborhood reported seeing Harmon's vehicle, a dark-colored sedan, driving back and forth near her home multiple times throughout the day. One neighbor stated that the same vehicle was parked at the end of the street for over an hour that evening. Police would later confirm this after checking surveillance footage from a nearby home security camera. That night, Jamilla contacted a friend by phone. According to the friend's later statement to investigators, Jamilla said she felt that someone was watching her. She also mentioned that she believed Harmon was following her car earlier in the evening when she ran errands. The friend advised her not to go home alone. Jamilla reportedly said she would stay indoors and keep her phone nearby in case of an emergency. By early morning on December 2nd, phone records indicated that Jamilla made at least 2 short calls to law enforcement. The calls were reportedly about disturbances outside her home. The first call, made around 10:15 a.m., lasted less than 2 minutes. She told the dispatcher she believed someone was outside her window, but by the time officers were dispatched, the person was gone. A second call later that afternoon was made to report a suspicious vehicle in the area matching Harmon's car. Patrol officers checked the area but did not find him at that time. As the day progressed, there were no further confirmed sightings of Jamilla until that evening. Tension was building around her movements, but no one anticipated that this would be the last day she would be seen alive. At approximately 7:30 p.m., Jamilla may well become her final 911 call. Dispatch logs later confirmed that the call lasted less than 2 minutes before abruptly ending. During the call, the dispatcher recorded loud background noise that included sounds of struggle, yelling, and panic. The transcript, obtained through investigative records, documented her voice shouting phrases such as, "Don't touch me," and "Stop." Moments later, the sound of a car door slamming was heard, followed by another scream and a distinct sound of a car engine revving aggressively. The call then went silent and the line disconnected. Dispatchers attempted to call her number back multiple times, but the calls went unanswered. Officers were immediately dispatched to the address associated with her phone's GPS location. When they arrived at the residence, Jamilla was nowhere to be found. Investigators noted several unusual signs around the property. The ground near her driveway appeared disturbed, and tire marks were visible on the dirt leading away from the house. A set of keys, 1 shoe, and a torn piece of fabric consistent with clothing she was last seen wearing were found nearby. Police photographed the scene and began treating the area as a potential crime scene. Officers canvassed the area, knocking on nearby doors to determine whether anyone had witnessed or heard anything unusual. Several neighbors stated that they heard raised voices earlier that evening, but did not see who was involved. One witness described hearing a woman screaming followed by the sound of a car speeding away. The next morning, law enforcement returned with tracking dogs to search for additional evidence. During this search, Jamilla's cell phone was discovered in a patch of grass approximately 300 feet from her home. The phone's case was cracked, and the device was powered off. Data extraction later revealed that the final outgoing call on the phone was indeed to 911. Despite immediate efforts, no one was able to locate Jamilla that night. There were no confirmed sightings of her after the 911 call, and her vehicle was also missing. From that point forward, she was considered missing under suspicious circumstances. On December 3rd, 2023, less than 24 hours after her disappearance, Jamilla's mother officially filed a missing person report with the Aiken County Sheriff's Office. The report described her as a 30-year-old woman, 5 feet 5 inches tall, with dark hair and brown eyes. The family stated that her disappearance was completely out of character, emphasizing that she was a devoted mother and always in close contact with relatives. Investigators began treating the case as a potential abduction due to the circumstances surrounding the final 911 call. Local law enforcement coordinated with search and rescue teams, deploying drones, dogs, and volunteer search parties to canvass wooded areas, roadsides, and nearby abandoned properties. Flyers with Jamilla's photo and last known description were distributed across Aiken County and surrounding areas. As hours turned into days, tension grew between family members and law enforcement over the perceived pace of the investigation. The family believed that more could have been done earlier, particularly given the prior 911 calls and the history between Jamilla and Daniel Harmon. They publicly urged police to treat Harmon as the central suspect immediately. Investigators confirmed that Harmon was the last person known to have had direct contact with Jamilla. They attempted to reach him for questioning, but he did not respond to initial calls. Detectives then visited his residence, where they observed that he appeared nervous and avoided eye contact. They also noted visible scratches and bruises on his arms and neck. When asked about his injuries, Harmon claimed he had been in a fight with someone else, but refused to elaborate. Harmon told investigators he had not seen or spoken to Jamilla in days. However, data retrieved from phone records contradicted the statement. His cell phone had been pinging in the vicinity of Jamilla's residence around the same time as the 911 call. Surveillance footage from a nearby convenience store also captured a car matching the description of Harmon's vehicle traveling toward her neighborhood around 7:20 p.m., only minutes before her emergency call. Police began cross-referencing vehicle registration data, reviewing camera footage, and collecting eyewitness statements. Within 48 hours, Harmon was officially designated as a person of interest. Meanwhile, search efforts intensified. Volunteers and relatives combed through fields, riverbanks, and wooded areas in and around the Aiken County region. Search teams used infrared drones to scan large territories at night. Local media stations aired Jamilla's photo and story, encouraging anyone with information to contact authorities. The Aiken County Sheriff's Office continued interviews with residents. One neighbor came forward stating that they saw a dark sedan speeding away from Jamilla's home shortly after 7:30 p.m. Another witness reported seeing the same car stop briefly along a rural road before continuing north. By the end of the week, evidence collected from Jamilla's property and Harmon's residence was being processed by forensic technicians. Investigators believe that the tire impressions near her home could potentially match Harmon's vehicle. They also sent soil and fiber samples for laboratory testing. Despite these efforts, no trace of Jamilla herself was found. Her family continued to organize independent searches, contacting community organizations for assistance. Police released official statements confirming they were treating the case as a likely kidnapping and possible homicide, given the circumstances and the violent indications found at the scene. As the days progressed, inconsistencies in Harmon's account increased suspicion. His statements changed across multiple interviews. He initially said he had been home during the time of her disappearance, then later claimed to have been with friends, none of whom could corroborate his alibi. His injuries were never credibly explained. By mid-December, the investigation had expanded into a multi-agency operation involving both local police and state law enforcement. Forensic analysis began confirming what investigators had already suspected, that Harmon's vehicle and physical evidence linked him directly to the night of Jamilla's disappearance. By this point, the timeline was clear to investigators. Jamilla had been attempting to distance herself from a violent ex-boyfriend who refused to let go. Her efforts to stay safe, including reaching out to authorities, had gone unfulfilled. On the night of December 2nd, she made her final call for help, and moments later, she was gone. From that night forward, Jamilla Smith would remain missing until discovery of her remains months later. Her final days have revealed a clear pattern of harassment, fear, and unheeded warnings, all leading to the call that ended in silence. On December 5th, 2023, law enforcement officers located Daniel G. Harmon at a residence in Aiken County, South Carolina. The search for Harmon had been active for 3 days, beginning immediately after Jamilla Smith's disappearance on December 2nd. Harmon had been identified early in the investigation as the prime suspect based on witness reports, phone records, and his known history of violent behavior toward the victim. When officers arrived at the residence, they were acting on information received from an anonymous tip suggesting Harmon was hiding in a family member's house on the outskirts of Aiken. Upon arrival, officers established a perimeter around the property. Attempts to contact Harmon through loudspeakers were made. According to police reports, Harmon initially refused to exit the residence. Law enforcement noted that curtains were drawn and movement was seen inside. The situation developed into a standoff lasting several hours. Negotiators were brought in to communicate with Harmon, urging him to surrender peacefully. During this period, tactical units positioned themselves strategically around the structure in case the suspect attempted to flee or destroy evidence. Officers recorded that Harmon made several phone calls during the standoff, some of which were traced to acquaintances later identified as potential witnesses in the case. Around the 4th hour of negotiations, Harmon requested to speak with an attorney before surrendering. Negotiators informed him that this request would be honored once he exited the property. At approximately 8:45 p.m., Harmon walked out of the house with his hands visible and was taken into custody. Without further incident, officers conducted an immediate search of the property. Inside, they found several personal items that became relevant to the investigation, including 2 cell phones, a laptop, a handgun, and a set of car keys. Harmon's vehicle, a silver sedan registered in his name, was found parked at the rear of the residence. Following standard protocol, the vehicle was impounded and transported to the county forensic lab for examination. Investigators documented visible traces of mud on the tires and trunk area, suggesting the car had recently been driven off-road. During the vehicle search, forensic teams detected what appeared to be small traces of blood on the rear floor mat. The material was collected and sent for DNA testing. Harmon was charged with murder, kidnapping, and multiple drug-related offenses following his arrest. Police noted that narcotics were found during the property search, leading to the additional charges. The murder and kidnapping charges related directly to the disappearance and presumed death of Jamilla Smith, who at that point was still officially classified as missing. Harmon was transported to the Aiken County Detention Center, where he was booked and held without bond pending further investigation. As part of standard investigative procedure, Harmon's cell phones were immediately analyzed under a search warrant. Digital forensic specialists extracted data from both devices. The data logs revealed extensive communication between Harmon and Smith in the days leading up to her disappearance, including messages that appeared threatening in tone. Furthermore, GPS location data from his device indicated travel patterns consistent with the victim's last known movements. Investigators also obtained surveillance footage from multiple local businesses located between Smith's residence and rural areas outside Aiken County. Several frames captured a vehicle matching Harmon's car traveling at night on December 2nd, around the same time Smith's 911 call was placed. In addition to these findings, eyewitness testimony from individuals in the area supported the timeline, placing Harmon near Smith's home during the evening of her disappearance. Within weeks, law enforcement publicly confirmed that significant evidence linked Harmon to the case. Detectives working under the Aiken County Sheriff's Office coordinated with the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division SLED to expand the investigation. Digital forensics, ballistic evidence, and witness statements were compiled into a comprehensive report for the solicitor's office. By early 2024, investigators began to suspect that Harmon had not acted alone. Data from Harmon's phone revealed a series of calls made immediately after Smith's disappearance. The calls were traced to 2 individuals later identified as Brian Alexander Hampton Jr. and Clyde James Henley II. Both men had previous associations with Harmon and were known to frequent the same social circles. The timeline showed that on the night of December 2nd and into the early morning hours of December 3rd, Harmon had communicated with both Hampton and Henley multiple times. Investigators used cell tower triangulation to establish that all 3 men's phones were in proximity to a rural area on the outskirts of Aiken County around midnight, an area that would later become significant in the investigation. Authorities obtained arrest warrants for both Hampton and Henley. On April 19, 2024, Brian Alexander Hampton Jr. voluntarily surrendered himself to law enforcement. During questioning, Hampton reportedly admitted to being contacted by Harmon shortly after Smith's disappearance. He told investigators that Harmon had asked for assistance in disposing of something and instructed him not to speak to anyone about it. According to the arrest affidavit, Hampton agreed to drive Harmon to a remote wooded area, though he claimed he did not know the full extent of what Harmon had done until later. Forensic analysis corroborated Hampton's statement. Tire impressions found near the eventual discovery site matched the tread pattern of a vehicle registered to Hampton. Additionally, cell phone records placed him and Harmon in that same vicinity on the night in question. Shortly after Hampton's arrest, investigators detained Clyde James Henley II on April 25, 2024. Henley was accused of assisting in concealing evidence related to Smith's death. According to case documents, Henley provided Harmon with transportation, tools, and communication devices following the incident. Investigators alleged that Henley helped Harmon clean his car and dispose of items that could be linked to the crime. Henley denied direct involvement, but admitted to helping Harmon get rid of things after being told it was just trash. Both men were charged as accessories after the fact of murder. Law enforcement stated that although Hampton and Henley were not directly involved in Smith's killing, their actions in aiding Harmon after the incident constituted serious offenses under South Carolina law. The combined analysis of phone records, vehicle tracking, and witness statements confirmed that all three men had been in contact within hours of Smith's disappearance. Investigators described this coordination as deliberate and organized. This evidence allowed prosecutors to expand the case from a single suspect homicide to a multi-defendant criminal conspiracy investigation. Despite Harmon's arrest and the accumulation of evidence, Smith's whereabouts remained unknown for several months. Detectives, joined by family members and community volunteers, continued searching across multiple regions of Aiken County. Law enforcement deployed drones, K-9 units, and off-road vehicles to cover large tracts of wooded and undeveloped land. The investigation relied heavily on cell phone tower data obtained from Harmon and his associates. Analysts reviewed geolocation logs, narrowing search zones to areas where the suspect's phones had remained stationary for extended periods on the night of December 2nd. One particular zone along Wire Road, an isolated, heavily wooded area, drew attention after consistent pings from Harmon's and Hampton's devices were detected there between midnight and 2 a.m. During the search, law enforcement also appealed to the public for information. Multiple residents contacted the sheriff's office with tips, including sightings of suspicious vehicles around the same time frame. These reports helped narrow the search area further. Family members of Smith continued to organize community searches while maintaining contact with investigators. Vigils were held periodically in her memory, and the family made public pleas for closure. While the family's emotional distress was not part of official reports, investigators acknowledged that their cooperation played a role in sustaining public attention on the case. On May 8, 2024, after 5 months of searching, a team of investigators and forensic experts discovered skeletal remains in a wooded section near Wire Road. The remains were located approximately 50 yards from an abandoned dirt trail that had been identified as a point of interest through cell tower analysis. Detectives described the burial site as shallow and hastily covered. Forensic specialists at the scene documented the layout, took soil samples, and marked several items of interest, including bullet casings located near the remains. The remains were transported to the Aiken County Coroner's Office for identification. Forensic testing, including dental records and DNA comparison, confirmed the remains belonged to Jamilla Smith. The coroner, Darrell Abels, concluded that the cause of death was multiple gunshot wounds to the head. The nature of the injuries suggested the shooting had occurred at close range. Further examination of the discovery site revealed additional evidence. Investigators recovered fragments of a plastic tarp and portions of clothing consistent with what Smith was last seen wearing. The soil composition on the tarp matched samples taken from Harmon's vehicle, strengthening the forensic connection between the suspect and the disposal site. The recovery of the remains allowed investigators to formally upgrade Harmon's charges from presumed homicide to confirmed murder. Prosecutors indicated that ballistic testing of the casings found near the body matched a firearm recovered from Harmon's residence at the time of his arrest. In the months following the discovery, investigators compiled a comprehensive case file linking Daniel Harmon to the abduction and killing of Jamilla Smith. Supporting evidence included digital records, witness testimony, ballistic reports, DNA confirmation, and forensic analysis of the burial site. The involvement of Hampton and Henley further revealed a coordinated effort to conceal the crime after fact. As of mid-2025, Harmon remains held without bond pending trial for murder, kidnapping, and related charges. Hampton and Henley also remain in custody on accessory charges. The discovery of Smith's remains marked the final stage in a complex, months-long investigation that combined digital tracking, forensic science, and traditional police work to uncover the full scope of the crime. On May 8, 2024, investigators recovered skeletal remains in a wooded area off Wire Road in Aiken County, South Carolina. The remains were transported to the Aiken County Coroner's Office for examination. The coroner, Darrell Abels, oversaw the autopsy with the assistance of forensic pathologists and investigators from the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, SLED. The primary objective was to confirm identity, determine the cause and manner of death, and assess whether the remains matched those of Jamilla Smith, who had been missing since December 2nd, 2023. Forensic identification began with dental record comparison. Jamilla's dental charts provided by her family's dentist, were matched to the remains with 100% consistency. DNA testing was also conducted using samples from Jamilla's biological mother. The mitochondrial DNA extracted from the bone marrow of the recovered remains matched perfectly, confirming the identity beyond any doubt. The condition of the remains showed signs of prolonged environmental exposure. Decomposition was consistent with a body left outdoors for approximately 5 months. Forensic entomology reports supported a death window between December 2nd and December 4th, 2023, aligning with the day of her last known contact and disappearance. The autopsy revealed multiple gunshot wounds to the head as the official cause of death. At least 3 distinct entry points were identified on the skull, consistent with shots fired from close range. 1 bullet passed through the left temple and exited the right occipital area, indicating a front-facing position between victim and shooter. Another projectile was recovered lodged within the cranial cavity, preserved enough to allow ballistic comparison. Forensic experts determined it was fired from a 9mm handgun, later identified as the same caliber weapon recovered from Daniel Harmon's residence during his arrest. Gunshot trajectory analysis indicated deliberate targeting of the head region, with shots fired in rapid succession. The coroner concluded the attack demonstrated precision, an intent to kill rather than a spontaneous act. Each wound displayed evidence of stippling and close-range powder burns, confirming that a firearm was discharged within a few feet of the victim. Clothing remnants found with the remains included torn fabric, likely from a dark-colored top and pants. Laboratory testing revealed soil and vegetation traces embedded in the fibers. The specific composition, pine needles, sand, and clay, matched samples collected at the discovery site, confirming that the body had been relocated post-mortem and intentionally concealed within the wooded terrain. Additional findings included fractured ribs and bruising to the collarbone area, suggesting that physical force was applied prior to death, possibly during an abduction or struggle. However, none of these injuries were fatal. The coroner ruled them as perimortem trauma, occurring shortly before the fatal gunshots. The toxicology report returned negative for all controlled substances, alcohol, and sedatives. This result indicated that Jamilla was fully conscious at the time of her death, eliminating any suggestion of incapacitation through drugs or intoxication. The report also confirmed that no defensive wounds were found on her forearms or hands, suggesting she was restrained or unable to resist at the moment of execution. Bullet fragments retrieved from the skull and burial site were submitted for ballistics testing. The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, SLED, Firearms Laboratory compared the striations on the bullets with test rounds fired from Harmon's seized 9mm handgun. The markings matched conclusively, establishing a direct forensic link between the weapon and the murder. The coroner's report, filed officially on May 13, 2024, concluded the manner of death as homicide. The findings outlined a deliberate, methodical execution. Multiple gunshot wounds to the head, close-range firing, relocation of the body, and absence of defensive struggle pointed toward premeditation. The brutality of the act, combined with forensic consistency, provided investigators with strong physical evidence to proceed with murder charges against Daniel Harmon. The breakthrough in Jamilla's case came from a combination of digital, forensic, and testimonial evidence. The investigation by the Aiken County Sheriff's Office and SLED pieced together a timeline that ultimately tied Daniel Harmon directly to the crime. Cell tower data was the first critical link. Investigators subpoenaed Harmon's phone records from December 2nd, 2023. Analysis of cell tower pings showed his phone moving along the same route as Jamilla's final known movements. Between 7:28 p.m. and 8:04 p.m., Harmon's phone connected to multiple towers covering Jamilla's residence, the back roads of Aiken County, and the remote area near Wire Road where her remains were later found. The pattern of travel ended abruptly at 8:11 p.m. when the device was turned off. Surveillance footage provided visual corroboration. Cameras from a gas station on Jefferson Davis Highway captured Harmon's vehicle, a dark-colored sedan, passing by at approximately 8 p.m. the night Jamilla disappeared. A second clip from a convenience store further down the road showed the same car returning less than an hour later, this time with mud along the lower frame, consistent with travel on unpaved roads near the disposal site. Forensic technicians processed Harmon's car following his arrest on December 5, 2023. Luminol testing revealed blood traces in the trunk lining and rear floor mat. DNA analysis confirmed a match to Jamilla Smith, establishing that her body had been inside the vehicle. The findings were submitted as part of the murder indictment. Investigators also recovered cell phones and digital communications. One of Harmon's phones contained deleted text messages, retrieved through forensic recovery. These messages included threats sent to Jamilla in the days leading up to her disappearance, such as, "You think you can walk away from me? If I can't have you, nobody will. You'll see what happens when you keep ignoring me." The language and timing of these messages were crucial in demonstrating motive and intent. Another decisive piece of evidence came from Brian Alexander Hampton Jr., one of Harmon's associates. During questioning, Hampton admitted under a plea agreement that he helped Harmon move the body and dispose of evidence. He stated that Harmon called him late on December 2nd, asking for assistance. Hampton described seeing Jamilla's body wrapped in a blanket inside the trunk and claimed Harmon confessed to taking care of it. Investigators verified Hampton's statement through phone logs, showing calls between him and Harmon during the relevant hours. Hampton also led officers to a remote section of land where they recovered burned fabric and remnants of duct tape, matching residue found at the burial site. Combined, the forensic, digital, and testimonial evidence dismantled Harmon's original claims of innocence. The cell data placed him at the scene. The DNA confirmed Jamilla's presence in his vehicle. The ballistics linked his firearm to bullets. The text messages and witness statements established motive and confession. Each layer of evidence supported the next, forming a complete chain of proof that pointed solely to Daniel Harmon as the perpetrator. Following his December 2023 arrest, Daniel Harmon was charged with murder, kidnapping, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a violent crime. He was also later indicted on drug-related offenses, uncovered during the investigation. Harmon's first court appearance occurred on December 8, 2023, at the Aiken County Judicial Center. During the hearing, Harmon appeared calm and expressionless. He entered a plea of not guilty to all charges. His public defender requested bond, citing lack of prior murder convictions, but the prosecution argued the overwhelming risk and seriousness of the charges. The judge denied bond, ordering Harmon held without release pending trial. The prosecution's case was led by the 11th Circuit Solicitor's Office, presenting a comprehensive narrative of the crime. Prosecutors outlined the sequence of events: the forced entry, the abduction following Jamilla's 911 call, the murder, and the subsequent concealment of her body. They emphasized the premeditated nature of the crime, supported by the forensic and digital evidence. The defense attempted to argue that the evidence was circumstantial. They claimed that while Harmon's car contained Jamilla's DNA, there was no direct proof he fired the gun. They questioned the credibility of witness Brian Hampton, alleging that his testimony was motivated by a plea deal to reduce his sentence. Defense attorneys also suggested that the ballistic evidence could have been contaminated due to environmental exposure. During the preliminary hearings, prosecutors presented the forensic reports in full. Experts from SLED testified on cell tower tracking, DNA testing, and ballistics analysis, confirming all procedures followed chain of custody protocols. Brian Hampton testified under oath as part of his agreement with the state. He repeated that Harmon admitted to shooting Jamilla multiple times in the head and described in detail how Harmon directed him to help relocate the body. His testimony aligned precisely with the forensic findings, including the location, condition, and manner of death. Court transcripts also documented emotional statements from Jamilla's mother. She described the family's struggle to locate Jamilla after her disappearance and the eventual confirmation of her death. Although her testimony reflected the personal loss, it also reinforced the timeline of events leading to the 911 call and disappearance. The judge maintained Harmon's attention pending trial, noting the seriousness of the charges and the risk of flight. The court scheduled jury selection and trial for early 2025. Outside the courtroom, the case generated significant public attention. Community members organized vigils and demonstrations calling for justice. Domestic violence advocacy groups highlighted Jamilla's case as an example of systemic failures in preventing repeated abuse. The court proceedings remain ongoing, with prosecutors preparing additional forensic presentations for the full trial. The defense has filed motions challenging evidence admissibility, but has not secured any dismissals. As of 2025, Daniel Harmon remains incarcerated in Aiken County awaiting trial. Both Brian Alexander Hampton Jr. and Clyde James Henley II face charges as accessories after fact. Their cooperation with prosecutors is expected to further strengthen the state's case. The evidence presented so far, the autopsy results, ballistic confirmation, digital tracking, and witness testimony, establishes a comprehensive chain of proof. Each detail ties back to December 2nd, 2023, the night Jamilla Smith's life ended. The investigation demonstrates methodical collection, forensic accuracy, and legal consistency, ensuring that every aspect of the case will be presented in full when proceedings resume in 2025. If this story gripped your heart and left you questioning the truth, don't forget to hit that like button and share with others who need to hear it. For more chilling true crime stories that dive deep into the mysteries behind these tragedies, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell. You won't want to miss our latest updates, investigations, and thought-provoking discussions. Thank you for being part of this journey with us as we uncover the truth and seek justice. Together, we can make a difference. Stay safe, stay aware, and we'll see you in the next one.